The phaser is the directed energy weapon of choice for Starfleet and the Federation of Planets. The term is an acronym for Phased Energy Rectification and a form of particle weapon. But why this form of technology? In its history, the Star Trek universe has displayed a wide variety of energy weapons, ranging from laser technology to plasma weapons and even unknown energies that are off the charts. Most other powers of the Trek universe end up pursuing disruptors as their primary weapons for both ship and personal combat, and very few species choose to pursue phaser research over disruptors. Hi all, Rick here, and today we're looking into the history, pros and cons of the Federation's energy beams of choice. So, phasers work by generating Nadian particles and directing the excited particle stream as an energy beam or pulse. Pew pew! The energy source was apparently plasma that was then focused through a phase emitter. The stream of nadions that were then produced are what's seen when the phaser is discharged. So effectively a phaser beam is a stream of these particles hammering into its target, transferring the energy to the target, giving it the definition of a particle weapon. Disruptors are the most common form of particle weapon and follow a similar principle, and although they seem to operate on a wider range of particle bases, they all share a similar effect. That is, that disruptors, well, disrupt. The stream of directed energy that a disruptor produces damages and disrupts the structure of the target at a molecular level. Disruptors also have a wider range of energy sources and can utilize particles other than nadions, such as thoron, tetryon and polarons. Polaron being the purple flavour of choice for the Dominion. In the year 2151, a fledgling Starfleet was in the midst of replacing its plasma weapons with phased weaponry. Some of the earliest examples of this included the handheld phase pistol and the ship-mounted phase cannons. As phase pistols could run off of plasma power packs, this evolution of the tech was probably brought about by the creation of the phase emitter. This marks the point of divergence from most species, as many, like the Romulan Star Empire, continued refining the use of plasma to produce more damaging effects. Now, speculation here, but not without basis. I suspect that the phase emitter introduces a modulation or effect into the particle stream that makes certain particle types, such as nadions, have differing properties from a regular particle stream, marking the key identifier of a phase weapon from a disruptor. Plasma is effectively ionized gas, and the plasma we see discharged as weaponry in Star Trek basically burns and vaporizes on contact, making its use as a weapon obvious. Though it still has its uses, even by the Borg, many other species continue to look for a better way of blowing each other up and usually settle on another form of disruptor or antimatter. Starfleet, meanwhile, despite dabbling with laser tech in the mid-23rd century, continued to pursue phaser technology. Although, yes, they did also develop their own antimatter warheads in the form of photon torpedoes, that's a separate topic. It should be noted that some other species that used phasers, like the Ferengi, may have simply used the term for its technically accurate description of the phasing state of the energy produced by their plasma weapons. As of the 23rd century, phasers were standard on all ships and as personal arms, having replaced nearly all other options for Starfleet vessels and crew. But it is with this commitment to phaser tech that we begin to see the benefits that they bring. Their utilisation. Phasers are particle weapons, yes, but the Federation's exclusive adherence to Nadion-based phased energy has led them to create a multi-purpose tool that is much more diverse in the field than a disruptor. This perfectly mimics the Starfleet and Federation ethos. Whereas a disruptor can only disrupt, damage and destroy, a phaser is a tool as well as a weapon. From handheld to shipside, phasers have been shown to do a lot and have a staggering number of settings, whereas a disruptor's utilisation extends from vaporize to wound. This suggests that there is something inherent to phaser technology that allows for a wider range of uses from a single source. Starting from its low power settings, a phaser can transfer heat to an object to warm it. making it an ideal survival situation tool as it can trap heat in objects, such as rocks, making for a short-term source of warmth. Higher settings can transfer enough energy of a specific frequency to temporarily shut down a nervous system, putting the target into a stunned state. Technically, stunning a target is painless, but I imagine that it's not a pleasant sensation either, judging by many a reaction to being stunned. Lingering effects from a stun are minor and pass in time, and this is where they trump disruptors. A disruptor can stun, but it does so by disrupting the nervous system, meaning that permanent damage is more likely. The stun effect of a phaser, on the other hand, can be modified to be momentary paralysis of an extremity, or to render a target unconscious by leaving a residual energy within the body to keep the nerve impulses suppressed. Higher stun settings could still kill a person if they hit somewhere vital, such as the brain, or the target received multiple successive hits. At a quarter power, a standard Federation sidearm would kill most humanoids by ramping up this stun effect to deadly levels. Phasers could go to much higher settings, and prolonged fire from a phaser beam exacerbated these effects. After all, it is emitting a stream of highly energized particles, and therefore did produce both heat from friction and concussive force. Phasers could quite easily shatter objects and, on maximum settings, vaporize whatever the beam struck, sometimes explosively. At this level, a phaser and disruptor basically have the same effect. The fact that phaser technology allowed for such a low to high yield usage means that a much wider degree of effects could be utilised by ingenious Starfleet technicians. Phasers were commonly used as cutting implements in absence of the correct gear, and the beam could be altered to such a fine level as to create a semi-effective welding torch. Again, most disruptors we see only seem to destroy. Hand phasers could also be used to drill through solid rock, and even had a setting called the disruptor setting that mimicked the effects of a disruptor. Another advantage of a phaser was that it could be easily altered to cycle through differing phase frequencies, allowing it to stay ahead of Borg adaptation for a time and even hit objects that were out of phase with reality. Like anti-vaxxers. No, I mean like certain interphasic cloaks. The energy a phaser emitted could also be set to a wide beam dispersion, but such a tactic likely was far reduced from the effective power output of a single beam. The most we ever see from a wide beam shot is a moderate stun effect. Again, most disruptors seem to lack this ability to alter settings on the fly without specialised designs. The handheld phasers had many settings and intuitive adaptations to make them as much of a tool in the field as a tricorder. I can't think of a more Federation approach to a weapon. Another race to develop the phaser was the Bajorans, a species with a relatively peaceful history. Well, preoccupation, so this reinforces the notion of phasers being a more civilised and humanitarian choice. As humanitarian as a sci-fi death ray can be, I guess. We do see them in use by the Cardassian Union too, though this is only present on their starships, as they tend to favour disruptors as personal arms. They also employ a unique merger of the two technologies to create a spiral wave disruptor. On starships, Federation phasers were basically the same, except far more powerful, running off their own power grid and later being tied into the warp core of a ship to draw on far greater energy reserves. Starfleet vessels also featured phaser strips, bands of emitters that allowed for greater firing arcs than most static disruptors. The use of these strips is likely due to the adaptability of phasers, as we don't see the same feature on most vessels outside of Starfleet that use disruptors. These ship-mounted phasers also possess the ability to stun. In theory. Though I imagine that it would be like trying to hammer in a nail with a jackhammer. You'd have to be very careful and precise, preferably using a computer to do all the maths for you. Imagine being the captain who messed up that right suppression. The pulse phase cannon was a completely offensive-based variety of the phaser, devoid of any function other than to hammer through enemy shields, and as such featured prominently on the Defiant class vessels as well as later models. Despite all this, however, phasers did have their drawbacks. They were incapable of breaking through several materials, such as neutronium and terranium, and could prove ineffective at operating in certain radiations or against certain energy frequencies. These weaknesses are shared by Disruptors too, but phasers seem to encounter them at a higher rate. All this paints a picture of phaser tech R&D being a more involved process that has a lot of potential pitfalls, and I'd wager most species stick with Disruptors as the easier option. To many, it may seem like more steps to reach the same outcome. A versatile organisation such as Starfleet, however, requires an equally versatile tool at its disposal. Starfleet has done much with phaser technology, making it on par with most other energy weapons in the Trek universe, but with the added benefit of flexibility. We don't really see any other organisation use phasers with the same practicality as Starfleet either. Disruptors may pack a bigger punch and leave a debilitating disruptive after effect, but they lack in utility. Besides, if Starfleet really wants to blow something up, it has antimatter torpedoes. All in all, Starfleet's put a lot of time and effort into phaser technology, starting slow and underpowered. Their persistence seems to have produced a much more adaptive tool than a disruptor, an adaptability and multi-purpose nature that allows for more humane effects, such as a stun and a device that can be reprogrammed on the fly with a push of a few buttons. Something that we seldom see from other weapons tech, and something that speaks of the Federation's values, even in warfare. I might go into the specifics of some of Starfleet's arsenal in another video if you guys want to see that, but this was mostly to establish that phasers are different in both form and function from disruptors. So let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can dig up, plus any other Trek tech you'd like to see discussed. Let me know below, and until the next video, thanks for watching. Goodbye.